Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've been off for a little bit because, I don't know, we've just been sort of, I don't know.
It's football. That's
well, the
why.
World Cup started, that's for sure, but I think and also Father's Day happened, so I had to do stuff.
Yes.
But we've been away. But we're back.
Yes, we're back.
And we've seen Ocean's 8.
Yes.
Which is the she-boot, as I believe they're known.
Is that what...
Yeah, that's the word that I've heard.
I'm not sure I like that name.
No, I don't like it. But it's this all-female sort of reboot of the Ocean's movies.
Yes.
So the Ocean's movies started back in the Rat Pack days, with Ocean's 11 back in, what, 50, 60 something?
62 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah. And then Steven Soderbergh brought them back in 2002-ish. 2000 maybe.
Something like that. It feels like they've been going on forever now.
Yeah, and that's when it became sort of a franchise with Clooney and Matt Damon and Brad Pitt and big stars. And they made 3 of those. And now it's being sort of rebooted again with a cast of women. So,
is reboot the right name? Because it's clearly part of the same franchise. There's a connection there, right?
So Sandra Bullock plays Debbie Ocean, who is Danny Ocean's brother, and she's mentioned quite a bit.
Yes.
He was the George Clooney character. So reboot I think is fair enough. It occupies clearly the same universe.
Yes.
But it's sort of, it doesn't really involve them. There are a couple of cameos.
Yes, Elliot Gould appears.
Yeah.
And
spoiler alert.
Oh well.
Well.
Okay, well there'll be lots of spoilers.
Yeah.
Though I don't think it matters in this film because
no, but I mean, if you don't know what the heist is, then that's part of the thing, you know.
Yes, though I mean, I'm sure we won't get into it. I mean, part of the pleasure of these films is actually having the heist explained to you, and then seeing it being carried out, and then kind of seeing it being foiled, and you're being surprised at the development, really.
Yeah, which I think is a failure in this film. Actually, there are lots of things that I like about the film. So let's say, like, spoiler territory is we are now in spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie, don't know what happens, then whatever. So there are lots of things that I like about the film. The cast is fantastic.
The cast is fantastic.
Huge array of stars. Cate Blanchett and Sandra Bullock are the main two. But I don't think they have enough chemistry. It's not like Clooney and Brad Pitt were in the old days where they played off each other. The movie isn't stylish enough. I put this down to the director because the cast is clearly capable. The director and the script, I don't think...
It's interesting you should say that.
Them.
I mean, my feelings about the cast was that Sandra Bullock just isn't good enough. That she's too inexpressive. So she always has like this tomboy girl humor, that often works very well. But she actually doesn't get a lot of that here, and what little she gets isn't really carried off. I thought the whole first scene where she kind of slightly cons her way out of her into her parole. Is not as charming or as funny or as charismatic as it could be. So, put her to the side. I always love looking at Cate Blanchett, but she actually doesn't have the best of roles in this anyway. No. So for me...
she's supposed to be the sort of second in command.
Yeah.
And she falls into the background, really.
She does. But I thought Anne Hathaway was fantastic.
Yeah, she was very good. And I find her very much an acquired taste. So, I'm glad that she's one of those where if she's not really that good, then it becomes the reason I hate the whole film.
Oh, right, okay. I don't feel strongly about her one way or another. I loved her in The Devil Wears Prada, and I think she's fantastic in this, really. And, it's kind of... It's a bit outsized as a performance, and she's clearly kind of poking fun at herself to a degree, right? Like, a film star and so on.
Yeah, I think that's probably why I got on with the character.
I loved her in this film, and I thought Helena Bonham Carter was fantastic. She was just a pleasure to watch.
Yeah.
And then there was all the women interrelating with each. So even though Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett, have had much better roles in this, there was actually something very nice about the way that their friendship was depicted and their interactions, and I liked all of that. And in many ways, I thought the film was made for me, really, because, the caper is like jewels. It's at the Met Ball. You get lots of close-ups of jewels and shoes and clothes and, a glamorous. Well, yeah, it's kind of like a gay man's dream movie, and I think a very girly movie, actually. So all of that I loved. And actually, I thought it was kind of well written, but not well directed. That's
well written. How?
Well, because I like the way that the caper kind of unfurled, but maybe you have things to say about that.
No, I had a problem with that. I found the caper way too straightforward. What I always liked about the Ocean's movies before, and also the TV show Hustle, which is basically like an Ocean's 11 every week, was the sort of the secrets and the way that things look like they're going wrong or do go wrong, and then there's a secret plan behind that actually this is what was happening the whole time. Those really clever intricacies in the plots. That's what I love, and this had none of that. They
had that at the end.
No, it didn't.
Well, when you think one thing has happened and then they show you the other.
Barely. What happens is they go, okay, there's this massive necklace that Cartier owns that they haven't let out of a vault for 50 years. We're gonna pretend that we're a fashion designer. We're gonna get this necklace put on Anne Hathaway's character, who's a star, who's not involved in the heist. And then we're going to poison her, get the necklace off her, and run away. And that's exactly what they do. It's not. And then when it gets to the point where you're going, okay, so something must have, what's going to be the twist? Like, are they going to get caught or something? They don't really. They kind of get chased, and then it turns out that Anne Hathaway was in on it because she kind of had to be, otherwise she would have just been able to give them up. So they had to cut her in on it basically and get her to help them to carry it off. And also they stole a load of other jewels just because they could. There's no twist in terms of
the twist was the other jewels.
That's not interesting. What's interesting is the kind of, it's going wrong, oh no, we actually were on top of it the whole time, this was part of the plan.
Okay, well, I agree.
It was really, really dull, actually, the way it turned out to be completely straightforward.
I think, I agree that the film had no suspense, and that it should have had, and I agree that there's a lack of snap to it all, actually, which is, a question of timing, it's a question of editing as well. And actually, I just think the graphic qualities in the film were not sophisticated enough. It could have been, Soderbergh's films are visually interesting. They're a pleasure to look at. And actually, there's a play on the look and the situation and so on that this film lacks.
Yeah,
right.
and also tempo and style and timing. If you compare this directly to Ocean's 11, the feel is very different. Ocean's 11 was so slick, it actually felt almost too slick for its own good. Like, no matter how badly it went for them, you felt like there was no way they're not going to pull this off. Like, the film is that sort of snappy and cool. And this is pretty dry.
Yeah, it's pretty baggy in a way. Like, things sag.
Despite that, I enjoyed quite a lot of it. I enjoyed, I guess, I until it turned out that the plan was really going to be that simple. I enjoyed sort of following it along.
I loved it, but I agree with your criticisms of the film. I loved it because, I like looking at jewels and, kind of, so for example, the fact that it was a Jean Toussaint necklace for Cartier, that means something to me.
Yeah.
The fact that Anna Wintour appears, all the cameos with, Elizabeth Ashley and Marla Thomas, which were, people who were big stars when I was a kid, and you think they disappear, and here they show up, right, in kind of smart little cameos, which, the film is dotted by, right? Things like, how Helena Bonham Carter is clearly based on Sandra Rhodes, right? Like, if you're into that world, it gives you a lot,
sure.
Really. And it's all kind of pleasurable, yeah, and so... you see, like, you go into Cartier and you see all the goods on display, and, that was all kind of rather splendid, really.
Although it still felt to me like that actually should have been even showier.
It should have.
When you get to, like, the opening of the Met Gala, and, all the stars are turning up and they're all dressed glamorously and stuff, you feel like there should have been a set piece here of just showing this off.
And actually... That's a very good criticism, because there is a documentary on the Met Gala,
right.
With Anna Wintour, and actually, it's rather disgraceful that those scenes in the documentary look a lot more spectacular, than they do in this film. Yeah, so kind of that is a bit of a disgrace, actually. Yeah, there should have been a lot more attention to all of that. To the dresses and what people were wearing, and actually, that element of spectacle that they could have worked on, because, this is clearly a film aimed primarily at women, right? And I think that the film is not attentive enough to, the visual pleasure in things like clothes and hair and makeup and jewels and
which is what it's all about.
Which is what it's all about.
The entire world that it's set in is this glamorous world of showing off your clothes, and like the film is centered around $150 million necklace.
Yes.
That it kind of fails to make
dazzling
shine.
enough. Yeah. I mean, when the film was going through Cartier, I kept thinking, oh, I wish this were better photographed. And also shown to you slower, actually. Which is one of the things that caper films often dealing with jewels like Topkapi, with Melina Mercouri. You're seeing what they're stealing and why and how valuable it is, and you get a really good look at it, and it's made to seem magnificent, and and kind of not enough attention is paid to that in this film.
I also feel the kind of underlying the reasons that Debbie wants to do the heist feel slightly muddled to me. I mean, it's interesting comparing them to Ocean's 11 again. They're kind of similar. There's a kind of professional motive, which is to make shitloads of money by stealing something very expensive, and there's the kind of personal motive, which in this case is revenge, and back in Ocean's 11 was kind of semi-revenge and semi-winning the girl back. He was winning the girl back from the guy he was stealing all the stuff from, so it was tied in together, probably a little better then. This is kind of separate. Basically, they're stealing all this, they're stealing the diamonds, and then they're pinning it on her ex-boyfriend who sold her out years ago and sent her to prison. But the ex-boyfriend angle felt weak. Really,
yes.
Not tacked on exactly, but it's not kind of integral to the plot.
It was underdeveloped because, in terms of what they show us, basically they show us a con that goes wrong, right? And that she, who is meant to be like this really smart cookie from a long line of con people in which everyone in her family is a con person, somehow didn't suss out that the hustle they were, undertaking was not airtight. So that thing is unbelievable in a way. And then you never get the sense that he was setting her up, that he was setting her up for his own advantage. You get the sense that it's a thing that went wrong, right? So that's actually not. I mean, you don't see very much of the heist that went wrong back in the day, but the sense that I got was that it was deliberate, because because you get this very deliberate part of him making her sign a document that then is what leads the cops to get her. Sure.
But you don't understand why he did that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem vengeful. It just seems like he's planning a con in which, should it go wrong, it would land on her instead of him.
Yeah.
So that's unbelievable, and so that's problematic in two ways. One, it's unbelievable that someone like her character would fall for that, and two, that it doesn't seem like a personal thing that would then entail like this very personalized revenge, at the end. So for me, that was a weak.
Well, it's interesting actually. The first part of that, the idea that she's too smart to have fallen for that, is interesting, because the film opens up on her parole, and she's spinning this story for the parole board to get out of prison. And what she says as part of it is, although my family is a kind of crime family, everyone's a con man in my family, I just got caught up with the wrong people and I fell for the wrong guy, is the phrase that she uses.
Right.
And it's interesting because when she said that, I thought, okay, so she's kind of playing a gender card. She's saying, oh, it wasn't me, I fell for the wrong guy, and it was a guy who got me into this, and that's why I made the mistake. But actually, it would have then turned out that that was completely made up, and there was no ex-boyfriend, no guy that she fell for, and actually the reason she was in prison in the first place was her own doing, and she was just saying this to get out of prison. You know what I mean? But then it turns out that no, it's kind of true, or at least partially true. She did have an ex-boyfriend, so the idea that she fell for him is not like absolutely, definitely clear that her kind of judgment was off, 5 years ago. But I think that's ultimately what you're supposed to take from it. The idea that actually it was the falling for him.
Okay, well, that's why the film is muddied, because I think you're right. But on the other hand, here's this woman who also tells the parole board that everyone in her family is a hustler, and for generations, right? And they're all really good at it. There's only one, her Aunt Ida or something, who wasn't. Right, and then who immediately upon leaving jail managed to hustle herself a free room, really expensive toiletries at Bloomingdale's, blah 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 blah, and she parlays the $45 that she leaves out of jail into like a wardrobe and the best hotel in town and blah blah blah. I mean, come on.
Absolutely, and as I say, so that's kind of half of what I thought, because I thought also part of it is you're going into this film going, okay, well, this is a feminist film ultimately.
Yes,
so
it is.
At least
Which it is.
And it's,
I think
so
it is.
you're going, this is going to be a kind of feminist kind of take on this. And so, like I say, when it opens up with her saying it was this guy, that's why I thought, okay, so there was no guy, but she's playing the board by saying that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the film can't open up like I say, the film can't promise you that it's going to be this feminist thing, and then open up by going, but she's susceptible to falling in love with the wrong guy. But then it kind of turns out that is the case, so it is muddled.
Well, I would have liked it much more had that whole romance, vengeful thing just not been a part of it. It didn't need to be a part of it. And actually the film is, to me, at its best when it's just dealing with the interactions between the women, and actually it kind of,
I suppose I do want there to be something underneath it. Like, as much as I want it to be a fun caper, which is what these films should always be, the idea that there's something underpinning, like, why are we doing this heist? So in Ocean's 11, there was the like I say, the similar kind of thing of getting the girl back and taking revenge on the guy who was a dick. And I suppose in the TV show Hustle every week, it was usually something along the lines of, we're going to con this guy because he's not a good guy, because he's conning people himself. Like, there was this whole thing of never conning an honest person. So that was their underlying ethos in that show. And in this, I get that they want to do something similar. They want to do, like, there is a personal reason behind this, which is why it. And I like that. I want that to be there. I want that to be interesting for the audience.
Well, but but
it's not interesting enough.
No,
that's the problem.
And actually, they could have made it much more
It's
interesting.
just poorly executed.
Why not put some kind of powerhouse, kind of actress as the villain? I think that would have made it kind of so much more interesting. Why not? I mean, it would have been even more interesting. Had you had somebody like Cate Blanchett, as the person who had wronged. Just the same way that it was the Andy Garcia character, and I forget which.
I agree.
So anyway,
that's ultimately the point. Like, I want there to be that, though. I just want it to be better than it was in this.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, the film lacked pace and snap and suspense, and also I just thought visually it wasn't interesting enough. No. So for me there was. So it's a mixed bag for me, because I love the actresses and I love looking at them and I love the milieu that they, do their heist in. I love all of that stuff, the diamonds and the jewels and the dresses. But actually, ultimately, it's not a great caper film.
No, absolutely. I do like, this is something that I was kind of clued into slightly before seeing it, and I was looking out for it. I like how all the characters eat.
Oh.
I thought this was really interesting because I just saw this little thing saying, look out for how the characters eat. And so I was picking up on it. And it's great because, well, partly it comes from the first Ocean's film, the previous Ocean's films with Brad Pitt, because Brad Pitt is kind of famous for always eating on camera. Right. Not just in those films, but he does it loads in those films. But just generally, it's one of those things that, like Leonardo DiCaprio always raises a glass in his films. And Tom Cruise always runs at a really high speed straight towards the camera, and Brad Pitt always eats something.
Okay.
And so I thought, so the film is kind of taking off from that a little bit, but also you think about how the characters eat. There's one point where for some reason they're just in Subway. It's while they're kind of planning the heist. They're in Subway, and there's no reason that they have to be in Subway. They could be anywhere, but they set it in a Subway. There's a couple of points where they're just having dinner, and actually Sandra Bullock is eating something. Cate Blanchett sitting across from him. They're chatting away, and there's like for no reason in the scene, Sandra Bullock says, "Have a bite of this." Remember it?
Yes.
Towards the start, she says, "Have a bite of this," and so she takes her gum out and she has a bite, and then she's like, "Yeah, it's pretty good," and that's the end of the scene. Like that's not how you button a scene, right? It's just kind of go. But I love that. There's just this really casual thing. Like if you think about women eating in film, when do they ever get to? Basically, whenever women eat in film, it's either because they're imitating fellatio, like they kind of round their lips, like doing that. But imitating sex, or they're eating a huge tub of ice cream because they've just been dumped.
Yes,
they never get to just eat.
Actually, it's very interesting because there are a lot of those scenes. Now I think about it, there's when they eat the hot dog when Cate Blanchett and Sandra Bullock, meet up and they're at a hot dog stand. There's the eating of the Chinese food. There's the shawarma. Stand, when they're doing the heist. There's the eating of the soup at the heist. Actually, there is.
So food is actually integral to the heist because they poison it to get Anne Hathaway to throw up. So like, there's this kind of thing about food where sort of. I suppose when I think about it, Sandra Bullock I think eats a lot on film, not just in this, but generally. I think it's kind of. I certainly remember in Miss Congeniality, she was stuffing her face because the whole point of that was. That like she wasn't actually a beauty queen, she was an FBI person, so like she didn't know how to act among all these women who were like not touching their food. But again, there was a kind of point to that. What I like is the pointlessness of so much of the eating in this, that they're just allowed to just be snacking. Like you would, which and again, like I say, they did in the Soderbergh ones. They were snacking and chatting over dinner and stuff.
What I liked was seeing so many generations of actresses, because it goes through quite a spectrum. So actually it's very interesting, for example, that Anne Hathaway, who to me is a very young star, nonetheless now sees her competition being is it Dakota Fanning or
I don't know,
one of the Fanning sisters, who's young and she's in competition with for the dresses, you remember, right? So I thought kind of that was all kind of very interesting, and there were elements that so on the one hand you have Elizabeth Ashley and Marlo Thomas, who are like now in their mid-70s. On the other hand, you have Sandra Bullock, who must be close to 50, and Cate Blanchett, and then so you have different tiers of ages of women interacting in the film, which is both a real pleasure. And actually, and it's also something like, I'm sure I'll get criticized for this, but I found
Bullock's 53.
Yeah. Well, I think. Who
knew?
Yeah. Well, I kind of knew, I suppose. Right? It was around that age. I thought her face was very inexpressive. So she's had a lot of plastic surgery. And you can see it. So she looks really good, but she looks really good with an immobile face. Yeah,
there's a kind of tension in the film between it being sort of knockabout and a comedy, and which would mean kind of whatever, like falling over and just making fun of yourself and being expressive, and then there's the thing of being incredibly beautiful and kind of dolled up and going to the Met Gala and like showing off. So and they don't sit nicely together. So the film is kind of trying to do both, and it achieves neither, really.
Yes. I mean, I thought there was also a weird thing, because it's got some great comedians, right? And people who make their living out of doing comedy. Mindy Kaling. And what was the other woman from Bridesmaids? The one who
Sarah Paulson.
No, the one who shifted goods from her garage, the one with the children.
Yeah, Sarah Paulson.
Okay, was that Sarah Paulson?
Sarah Paulson, yeah.
Okay, well, there's a lot more that they could have done with those characters. And, one of the things that we were discussing when we were discussing Baby Driver is, how great it was at just kind of visual comedy, right? A kind of making gags out of like the sights and the sounds and the cutting and this is so one note. Like there's not even any slapstick, much less kind of playing on anything with the rhythms of the film, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no inventiveness.
Yeah. In the direction at all.
Basically,
but still, it's a film that I enjoyed very much.
Yeah, enjoyed despite quite a lot of things. Like,
yes.
It still kind of has a certain something. I think the cast deserves a huge amount of praise for that. I think they're the reason to see it.
They're the reason to see it, and actually they're mostly wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, even though I've been complaining about some of them, I mean, they're still wonderful. It's a question of degrees. I mean, I really love Anne Hathaway, and I think this is one of her best things. And I've criticized Sandra Bullock and so on, but they're still good. It's just a comparative thing. It was a pleasure to watch them all.
I also I do like the way it kind of connects with the previous Ocean's films. Just barely. It kind of sets up, as we've said, that Debbie is Danny's sister, but there's also this thing of how Danny is dead. Danny Ocean passed away, and you see her at his grave very early on in the film. Danny Ocean, 1963 to 2018, and she's there, but she says, I hope you're in there.
Yeah.
So there's this thing of like, so he's probably not, right?
He's not.
Like, he's faked his death, and then later on, I can't remember which character it is, but I think it might be Rihanna's character, sees a photo of him, and she says, "Oh, he's hot."
Yes.
And basically says something like, "He's not really dead, is he?" And she says, "I don't know."
Yeah.
I love how casual that is. I love that they haven't made a big thing out of it, but later on there may be like a new Ocean's film where the two of them together. He's going to come back. I like the sense of humour behind that.
Yeah.
That they weren't making a big deal out of it. He's probably going to come back.
Yes, I like that as well. Though the other Ocean films to me were funnier than this one.
Yeah. Even the second one, which had that god awful bit where, do you remember the Julia, what's her name?
Roberts.
Julia Roberts. She plays Tess, and they say, "Tess, you look an awful lot like Julia Roberts."
I love that. I love that in that film.
It was brave. I'm going to give him that. It was ballsy. Out. She played herself, and then she's like, "But I don't think I can play myself." On the other hand, I can actually remember her character's name.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Yes.
Because the only one I can remember from this is Debbie, who's the Danny Ocean's sister. I can't remember any of the other character names.
No, me neither.
That says something.
It does.
I mean, I saw earlier, because we're going to see Jurassic World tomorrow.
Yes.
And I saw someone saying on Twitter, "Can anyone tell me, without looking it up, the name of Chris Pratt's character?"
No.
And it's one of those things, like, this is a huge, huge movie following on a huge, huge franchise, and all you can remember is Chris Pratt is in it, not his name or anything. You know what I mean? Whereas I can remember the characters I can remember Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler. Like that's what makes that says something.
Well, my memory's too bad to continue with this part of the discussion because I can't remember anything.
But I still think it's what says something. It's something unmemorable, and kind of will-o'-the-wisp.
Anyway, shall we wrap it up?
Sure.
So final verdict.
It's all right, and I think there's probably more. Do you think we've scratched the surface enough of the kind of? There is something about it being, a feminist kind of reboot. I mean, like the Ghostbusters one where they said, okay, we're going to do this, but we're going to do this all female. Like, there's something.
There's something
notable in that.
Yes, and something that hasn't been given enough credit because, I think we were watching it with an audience that I would say was over half women, which one almost never sees, right? And they were enjoying it. Like, there was a woman next to me who'd brought her own cans of Coke and her own crisps and you could tell she was in heaven, right? Like there is something about a sector of the audience normally not being addressed that this film addresses, and this film offers, I think, a lot of satisfactions to that audience.
Yeah. And it's not going to get on people's tits as much as Ghostbusters did because there aren't people who kind of take Ocean's 11 to their heart as people did with Ghostbusters.
No.
So it's not this kind of, what the problem with Ghostbusters, but it's this sort of, nerds love it, and so anyone who intrudes on that is an evildoer.
Yeah.
People don't feel that way about Ocean's 11.
I mean,
I knew Ghostbusters had its problems, but none of them were to do with the fact there was a cast of women.
I think this is a film that, guys will find enjoyable, but actually that women will love.
Yeah, maybe the case. But actually, I think it could do. I think a female director would have done so much more. She would have made more. She would have understood I think the milieu she was working in.
That's something that I don't understand, you know. So if you're going to the trouble to, you know, make an all-women's caper film, why not have a woman direct it? It makes no sense to me.
No, I agree. I agree. The director and co-writer, he co-wrote it with a woman, is Gary Ross, who directed The Hunger Games, the original one, which was not great, not
it's
bad.
It's very badly directed. I remember it as being very badly directed.
But I suppose
along the same lines that we're discussing this one.
I was going to say, but interesting insofar as it's also a kind of young. It's a woman's film in a way, kind of basically. Like,
it is.
It's not just a woman's film. It's meant to appeal to absolutely everyone because it's a huge kind of star vehicle as well. But it's it's kind of very.
Well, it's a women's film that's meant to appeal to everyone. It's
right.
It's a women's fantasy action adventure film that's meant to appeal to a broad audience. But
He directed Free State of Jones.
I don't know what that is.
That's the Matthew McConaughey thing about the guy who sort of set up his own sort of state in kind of mid-1800s America. It's kind of interesting. I kind of like that film. It had its problems, but again... And he also wrote Big back in the day.
Okay, well,
Big
Big
is
great.
The guy who could write Big wrote this.
Bah, but Big was directed by a woman.
True.
So
maybe that's what needed to happen.
They should have gotten Penny Marshall to direct Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
Ocean's 8.
Ocean's 8, yeah. What's she been up to recently?
I don't think... I don't know. I saw her in interviews, but I don't think she's directed a film for a long time. Look her up, I might be wrong.
Yeah, I'm just having a quick look. No, she hasn't directed a film since 2001.
There you go.
Yeah. Riding in Cars with Boys, which I haven't even heard of. So you're right. Women need more opportunities, basically.
Well,
and if they can't get an opportunity directing this, what are they going to get an opportunity directing?
No, it's true.
This is the film for a woman to direct.
It is. So kind of, it's the producer's fault, because that should have been like a kind of a key point, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, there you go. I had fun.
Yeah, I more or less had fun, but but I'd say see Free State of Jones as well.
All right. On that note, thank you very much for listening. We are on iTunes,
SoundCloud,
Facebook, Twitter.
Eavesdropping at the Movies on all of them. On Twitter, it's at Eavesdrop Movies. And and tomorrow we're seeing Jurassic World 2 or Jurassic... Yes. I can't remember what.
And we will be talking about how it feels like we've been watching the same films for 25 years.
Yeah. And then on Sunday we're seeing Hereditary.
Okay.
Which basically everyone, interestingly with Hereditary, everyone's been kind of going, will everyone see Hereditary so we can all talk about it? But like everyone's been very quiet about it because no one wants to ruin it for anyone else, which is interesting.
Okay,
so there's something good about Hereditary.
We'll have to pay special attention.
Unless you're American, in which case it's Hereditary. Because they're twats.
So, goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.